Sometimes what seems like absence is actually the beginning of a more subtle presence, a quieter, more powerful presence. There comes a moment on your journey when you begin to feel something inside you shifting. There are no visible signs. No one around you notices. But inside, something pulses differently, as if your soul has begun to move before your life has caught up with it. Maybe that's why you're here. Maybe not by chance, but by attunement. Because there's a part of you that has already begun to become rich, even if the mirror doesn't show it yet, even if your bank account doesn't reflect it yet. True wealth doesn't start with money. It starts with a silent, invisible, inner state. Napoleon Hill said, "All wealth begins with a thought." And what he meant goes beyond positive thinking. He was talking about what comes when the mind and spirit align toward a deeper purpose. Most people chase results. They wait for checks, opportunities, applause. But there is a point at which true transformation happens, and it is always before the world notices. Transformation begins when your inner system changes frequency, even if everything on the outside seems the same, or even falling apart. Hill's mentor, Andrew Carnegie, taught that the mind is the only tool with absolute power over human destiny. That it is not circumstances that define your life, but what you think, feel, and decide silently when no one is looking. And this is not self-help. This is spiritual neuroscience. Your brain begins to function differently when you enter a state of purpose. Your electromagnetic field changes, your nervous system changes, your way of reacting to the world changes. Wealth does not begin with luck. It begins with awareness. In this video, we are not going to talk about magic. We are not going to promise instant numbers or escape routes. What you are going to hear here is more powerful because it is real. We are going to walk together through invisible signs, signs that indicate that, even without knowing it, you have already begun to become a prosperous person, even when nothing seems to be working, even when the crisis surrounds you, because these signs are not external. They are vibrational, and when they appear, it is because something inside you is already saying, "I am ready." Maybe you are seeing these signs without knowing it. Maybe you are judging yourself for feeling what you feel. But maybe these feelings are exactly what the universe sends when someone is preparing to receive more. The restlessness, the silence, the urgency, the change in friendships, the discomfort with the superficial. None of this is a coincidence. All of these are silent codes of a consciousness that has begun to align itself with the universal principles of creation. So, if this content touches something in you, if it reminds you of something that your mind has not yet explained, but your heart has already recognized, write in the comments, "My mind is already ready for the invisible wealth," because this simple gesture can be the beginning of an energetic confirmation, and the universe responds to frequencies, not to words. Now breathe. Stay present. What follows are revelations. And if you feel truth in any of them, it is because this video did not come to you by chance. It has arrived because your time is beginning. The first silent sign, when you begin to feel discomfort with the old version of yourself. There is an uneasiness that has no name, but that grows inside you. A subtle discomfort, as if the emotional skin you inhabit is becoming too small. The same conversations that used to entertain you now tire you. The routines that once seemed safe now feel like prisons. And even without understanding why, a part of you begins to distance yourself, not from the world, but from the old version of yourself. This type of discomfort is not a mistake. It is the first sign that your consciousness is expanding. Napoleon Hill called it creative dissatisfaction. It is the discomfort that precedes all true transformation. It is not depression. It is not failure. It is a calling. When you begin to feel uncomfortable with what you once accepted, it is because your spirit has begun to move towards a new, vibrational pattern. The old me, the one that tolerated excuses, that adapted to fear, that shrank from possibilities, begins to die quietly, not with drama, but with presence, with clarity. And that hurts, because growing spiritually almost always requires going through a kind of internal mourning. You're not losing yourself. You're just letting go of what no longer serves you. Inner restlessness is the harbinger of a quantum leap, and wealth, true wealth, is not born from comfort. It is born from this point of friction between who you were and who you are about to become. This discomfort is sacred. It is what pushes you, even if unhurriedly, towards the next version of yourself. The version that already knows what it wants, even if it doesn't yet know how to get there. So, if you feel that you no longer fully recognize yourself, if you are questioning habits, relationships, paths, don't fight it. Be silent and listen. This is the first step. Your soul has already begun to walk, and the mind, little by little, will need to learn to follow it. Beware of silent comparison. It disguises its unique frequency with other people's noise. There is a type of comparison that does not shout, but whispers. It does not appear as open envy or declared competition. It acts from within, in the silence of unspoken thoughts. You look at other people's lives, the pace, the numbers, the milestones, and you feel a slight pinch as if you're falling behind. There's no jealousy, but there's a disconnect. As if, for a moment, you've forgotten your own path. This type of comparison is one of the most disguised saboteurs of manifestation because it alters your frequency. It distorts your field. Napoleon Hill said that each person carries within them a unique vibration, an original field of intention and purpose. But when you start comparing your journey to someone else's, that field becomes contaminated with external noise. You align yourself with a frequency that is not yours. And as a consequence, you move away from your own point of manifestation. The mind that compares is the mind that has forgotten its own time, and the time of the soul is not the same as the clock. What you are building, silently, energetically, vibrationally, may not yet bear the same visible fruits that others are already reaping, but the roots you plant silently can support trees that will last for decades. And what seems slow is actually depth. Comparison is not only useless, it is dangerous, because it undermines vibrational confidence, and confidence is everything in the process of manifestation. When you trust, the field responds. When you doubt, it closes. So instead of asking, why hasn't it happened to me yet, try asking yourself, what in me is being prepared, silently, deeper than I can see? There is wisdom in respecting your own cycle. There is greatness in not rushing. And there is richness in knowing that your path doesn't have to look like anyone else's to be true. Comparing yourself is disconnecting. Feeling unique is remembering who you came to be. And when that memory returns, everything starts to flow again. Your perception of time changes. You start to feel urgency without anxiety. There is a subtle, almost imperceptible moment when time starts to behave differently within you. It's not rushing. It's not rushing. It's as if the clock of your soul has been awakened, calling you to a higher direction. You feel a quiet urgency, an inner need to move. But this movement doesn't come with fear. It comes with clarity. It's as if a new frequency is settling into your body, saying, now is the time. And even though you don't yet know exactly what to do, you feel like you can't put it off any longer. This kind of urgency is sacred. It's not born of lack, but of presence. It's not an anxious, pressing urgency. It's an inspired, guiding urgency. It's the kind of energy that happens when your spirit already knows that the time has come to act, even if your mind is still trying to organize its steps. Napoleon Hill spoke of this state as the alignment of action with the creative mind. It's when desire, thought, and emotion harmonize, and your inner time is reconfigured. It's at this point that you realize that you can no longer hide behind doubt, that later is no longer an excuse, that waiting is no longer protection, but resistance. And then you start moving, not with desperation, but with focus. Not to please the world, but to respond to the call of your own conscience. This urgency without anxiety is one of the clearest signs that your mind has entered a vibrational state of creation, because fear paralyzes, but alignment propels. When you feel this kind of urgency, even your body reacts differently. Tiredness becomes direction. Procrastination loses ground. The will to act appears even without external motivation, because there is something greater moving you, something that comes from within and does not depend on anyone's applause. It is as if the universe begins to whisper, It's ready. Just start. And even if there are no immediate results, you feel that each step, each gesture, each choice is being energized by a purpose that has finally taken shape. The awareness of time changes because you have changed. What once seemed distant now seems inevitable. What once seemed like a dream now seems like a direction. The clock of the soul never runs late. It just waits for the moment when you finally hear the call. And when this call turns into peaceful urgency, it is because time has stopped being an enemy and has become an ally. And it is in this state of active presence that true wealth begins to approach. Because the universe does not respond to speed, it responds to frequency. And the frequency of the conscious now is one of the most powerful that exists. It is the now that does not run, but moves. It is the now that does not demand, but reveals. It is the now where everything has already begun, even if it still seems invisible. You stop waiting for someone to come and rescue you and start acting as your own mentor. There is a moment when the silence becomes so profound that you realize something essential. No one will come, not because the world is cruel or indifferent, but because somehow the universe knew that this journey was yours alone. And when this awareness arrives, it does not bring sadness. It brings power. A silent power, born of spiritual autonomy, an awakening that breaks through the last layers of emotional dependence. And at that point, you stop asking for permission, you stop waiting for external signs, and you start walking with your own light. Napoleon Hill called this emotional self-mastery, a state where you no longer need validation from outside to start moving from within. It is when you stop being a prisoner of other people's applause and become your own mentor. This is a clear sign of vibrational preparation for wealth, because all abundance, before being material, is a consequence of identity. And identity is only built when you choose who you are going to be. Even if the world has not yet recognized you as such, you begin to realize that you are no longer looking for advice on how to act. You seek awareness to remain. You no longer need someone to tell you what to do. You just need to be silent enough to hear the voice that has always been with you, your own, the same one that, for years, you ignored in the name of logic, fear, or the expectations of others. But now it speaks. And when it speaks, everything that is not you begins to fall away. This transition can be lonely, and sometimes it hurts. Because there is a part of us that has always wished someone would say, "I take care of everything." But the mature soul knows that true care does not come from others. It comes from the decision not to abandon yourself, to continue even without a map, to fall and get up not as a failure, but as a path. And that is wealth. The courage to be your own foundation. When you stop waiting for rescue, something inside you aligns with your purpose. Life stops being a place of survival and becomes a space of creation. And when you enter this state, the universe responds. Because the universe does not reward those who wait. It moves for those who move. And it moves even more for those who move even without guarantees. The greatest form of abundance is not what you receive. It is what you discover you can give to yourself. When you become your own mentor, everything changes. You do not just act. You lead your own existence. And this inner leadership is the vibrational foundation of all true prosperity. Wealth begins in that moment, when you choose to trust yourself, when doubt still exists, but it is no longer in charge, when you finally understand that the answer you expected from outside already lives within you, and it always has. An internal disgust for waste begins to emerge, of time, of energy, of excuses. There is a silent point in your inner evolution when you begin to feel repulsion for what you once tolerated. It is not anger, it is not contempt, it is something deeper, a kind of energetic repulsion. You can no longer remain where your soul does not flourish. You can no longer bear the excess of words that do not turn into action. Excuses, once justifiable, now sound like distractions disguised as logic. Empty promises, plans that are always postponed, conversations that revolve around nothing. All of this begins to generate an almost physical discomfort, as if your vibrational field were rejecting the waste of existence. This disgust is subtle, but it marks a watershed between who you were and who you are becoming. When the soul begins to align with its purpose, it no longer accepts being fed with emotional crumbs. It demands direction, clarity, intention. And when this happens, you begin to observe with greater clarity where your energy is leaking. With whom? In what situations? In what thoughts? And that is when true transformation begins. Napoleon Hill stated that the spirit of abundance is incompatible with stagnation. What does not move rots. And the mind that wants to create wealth needs to learn to close the vibrational leaks. Time is energy. Attention is currency. And the way you distribute them determines the field you feed. When you spend too much time justifying yourself, you are in fact telling the universe that you are not ready yet. When you stay in cycles that only drain your strength, you are saying, albeit unconsciously, that you accept less than you deserve. And then, almost naturally, you begin to eliminate the excess. Not out of rigidity, but out of cleansing, out of vibrational necessity. Distractions lose their shine. Escapes lose their flavor. What once served as anesthesia now bothers you. And this discomfort is a sign, an internal code that your energy system is seeking a new pattern, a pattern of presence, depth, and emotional efficiency. You begin to say no more firmly. You begin to cut short conversations that do not elevate you. You stop responding to what no longer adds to you. And each of these small actions is a movement of vibrational affirmation. You are saying to yourself and to the universe, "My energy is sacred." And it is this awareness that begins to open invisible doors. Because wealth does not tolerate waste, the flow of prosperity only takes hold where there is intention, where there is direction, where there is respect for one's own time. And when you begin to feel this silent repulsion towards what distracts you, it is because you are already choosing, even if unconsciously, the life you want to build. A life without empty excesses. A life full of meaning. A life where everything has presence, and nothing is thrown away. Not time, not energy, not you. The invisible mistake, confusing movement with progress. Not all movement is growth. Not all action is progress. There are times when life seems full of activities, commitments, tasks, but inside, everything remains still, as if you were spinning in circles, accumulating meaningless fatigue, running without direction. And the truth is that this hectic pace is often just a disguised form of stagnation, an unconscious attempt to avoid the silence necessary for real transformation to happen. Napoleon Hill and other masters of the creative mind have always warned against this mistake. True progress does not shout. It is not measured in the quantity of tasks accomplished. It is measured in the quality of presence, in clarity of intention, in internal alignment. And that is precisely why so many people work tirelessly without moving forward, because they are not building from the inside out. They are just reacting to the external world, trying to fill the void with busyness. Harv Eker said that the rich mind does not act out of agitation, but out of intention. And this phrase carries a powerful secret. It is possible to be exhausted and still not have moved forward. It is possible to appear productive and still be vibrationally disconnected, because true progress is not about how many things you do, but about who you are becoming while doing them. When you start to notice this difference, everything changes. You start to review your routines, your habits, your choices. You start to ask yourself, is this taking me where I want to go? Or am I just repeating old patterns in a new guise? And this questioning is liberating, because it gives you back the power to take conscious pauses, to choose what really matters, to let go of the rush and embrace purpose. This is one of the most subtle signs of vibrational change, the ability to discern between being busy and evolving. You stop doing things for the sake of doing them and start doing them with presence, with focus, with intention. And even if the world doesn't see the difference, your energy field sees it, your soul sees it, and the universe responds to this precisely. Wealth is not born from excessive action. It is born from the alignment between who you are, what you feel, and what you choose to create. And this alignment is only possible when you understand that you are not here to prove yourself. You are here to express yourself. And true expression requires space, direction, and pause. Because not every race is progress. And not all silence is stagnation. Sometimes it is in not doing that the soul finds the right step to finally begin to prosper. You attract new ideas, but not just any ideas. Ideas that smell of purpose. There is a point on the path of transformation where ideas stop being just random thoughts and start carrying a different kind of energy. You begin to realize that certain inspirations don't come from you, they pass through you. These are ideas that arrive with a calm but unavoidable force. They don't shout, but they insist. They appear during your shower, in the midst of silence, at the moment when you least expect it. And when they appear, you feel that there is something there, something that is not ordinary, something that did not come just from the logical mind, but from a deeper and more sacred field. Napoleon Hill called this phenomenon direct inspiration from the infinite. He believed that great fortunes and great projects are born from this kind of connection, a link between the individual and universal intelligence. It is not just creativity, it is intuition guided by purpose. You are not simply thinking, you are being used as a channel. And this only happens when you begin to vibrate at a frequency compatible with the achievement you wish to manifest. These ideas are not random. They do not appear to entertain you. They come loaded with a calling, with a mission. They bring a kind of clarity that does not require effort. They do not require you to understand everything immediately, but they ask that you trust what you feel, because they smell of truth. They smell of purpose. And even if they do not yet know how to be born into the world, they already know the path within you. At this stage of the journey, you begin to differentiate ideas that are just an escape from those that are a seed. Ideas that come from the ego are agitated. They want quick recognition. They seek validation. Ideas that come from the spirit, on the other hand, are silent and firm. They do not need to convince. They just present themselves. And you feel, you do not want to ignore them. You cannot ignore them, because a part of you has already understood that this idea is, in fact, a reminder, a message from the invisible saying, you are ready for something greater. The frequency that attracts this type of idea is the same frequency of prosperity, not because the idea itself will generate wealth, but because it sets you in motion with your purpose. And where there is purpose, there is fluidity, there is expansion, there is connection with abundance. Because life prospers when you are doing what you came to do. And even if this idea still seems small, it carries within it a universe. True wealth begins like this, with an idea that finds you before anyone else, with a vision that pulses inside before becoming reality on the outside, with an inspiration that, even invisible, is already transforming you. Because a mind aligned with purpose is a fertile field, and in this field, each right idea is a call, a portal, a silent response that says, keep going, you are on the path. Hidden signs in the body, creative insomnia, accelerated heartbeat when thinking of something bold, sudden desire for silence. There are changes that begin in the body even before they become conscious in the mind. They are subtle but profound. A new rhythm pulses inside, a slight warmth in the chest when imagining something big, a strange agitation that arises at night, not due to anxiety, but due to spiritual excitement. You are tired, but you cannot sleep. Your body is not on alert due to fear. It is awake due to vision. It is the insomnia of someone who is in transition, of someone who is beginning to pick up on signs of a new reality about to be born. These signs are not symptoms. They are messages. The body is the first to feel when the soul changes direction. When the mind begins to vibrate at a higher frequency, the nervous system responds. Not with chaos, but with intensity. It is as if the organism is trying to keep up with an inner expansion. You feel unexplained chills. Your heart races for no apparent reason. And at the same time, a deep desire for silence begins to emerge. As if the noise of the world became unbearable. As if only emptiness could house what is being gestated. Napoleon Hill understood that the body is an instrument of manifestation, that great leaders, inventors, and achievers often entered altered states of perception without even knowing how to explain it. It was not magic, it was vibration. It was the body translating into sensations what the mind did not yet have words to express. And you, perhaps, are beginning to experience exactly that. These physical impulses are signs that your energetic structure is being reconfigured, that something inside you is saying yes to the new, even if the old still tries to resist. So, don't be surprised if you feel the need to withdraw more, to stay in silence for longer, to sleep less, but dream more, to distance yourself from places, voices, and content that were once part of your routine. It is your vibrational system choosing what strengthens and rejecting what weakens. The desire for silence is not tiredness, it is wisdom. It is the body asking for space to process a new frequency. It is your field saying, there is something being formed here inside, and I need presence to sustain it. And this is beautiful, because it is in this fertile void that ideas mature, that directions become clear, that intuition is strengthened. You are not becoming strange, you are becoming aligned. You are beginning to function in a new internal system. And the body, wise as it is, warns you beforehand with subtle but unmistakable signs. Because before manifesting something outside, the universe always organizes what is inside. And when this organization begins to happen on a physical level, it is because the new reality is no longer a possibility. It is imminent. It is close. And you have already begun to prepare yourself. Even without realizing it, even without understanding it, you are already vibrating differently, and the body only confirms it. You begin to review friendships that supported your old frequency of scarcity. There comes a silent moment when the voices around you no longer resonate the same way within you. Laughter sounds more hollow. The topics that used to entertain you now tire you, not because people have changed, but because you have changed. Because your energy field is no longer tuned to the same type of conversation, the same type of belief, the same vibration that, for so long, you accepted as normal. This is one of the most challenging signs of awakening to prosperity. The need to reevaluate who is around you, not out of arrogance, not out of rejection, but out of vibrational integrity. Napoleon Hill spoke about the power of the group mind, the importance of surrounding yourself with people who strengthen your ideals, who elevate your mindset, who reflect the reality you want to create. Because whether you realize it or not, every relationship is an exchange of energy. And if that exchange weakens you, even if it is out of affection, there is a silent cost being charged to your expansion. Revising friendships is not about cutting people out. It is about cutting patterns. It is recognizing that certain bonds were formed at a time when you were someone you are no longer. It is realizing that behind the nostalgia, there is also an attachment to old ways of thinking, to shared limiting beliefs, to jokes that mock abundance, to advice that is born of fear and not wisdom. And you begin to realize that you can no longer laugh at the same jokes, that you can no longer accept the normalization of scarcity as a lifestyle. Because now, something inside you demands coherence. It demands truth. It demands presence. And yes, it may hurt. It may be scary. It may bring guilt. But this review is inevitable because wealth, like all high vibrations, requires space. And this space, sometimes, is only conquered when you let go of what holds you back, even if it seems comfortable, even if it is part of your history, because your history cannot limit your destiny. It is at this point that you begin to be attracted to new encounters, new conversations, new fields, people who speak from the heart, who vibrate with purpose, who do not mock faith, who don't mock the dream, people who, even in silence, remind you that you can do more, and that you don't need to diminish yourself to belong. Changing your circle is one of the most powerful and most spiritually demanding steps on the path to prosperity, but it is also one of the most liberating, because when you start to surround yourself with people who vibrate similarly to you, everything speeds up, everything flows, everything becomes clearer. life starts to respond not only to what you feel, but also to who you allow to walk alongside you. And you finally understand that it's not about leaving people behind. It's about not leaving yourself behind. It's about honoring your new frequency and allowing your energy, free, clean, light, to find new mirrors. Mirrors that remind you every day of the person you are becoming, of the reality you have already begun to manifest, and of the wealth that begins with those you choose to have around you. You lose the fear of seeming crazy for wanting more, and you start to seek with silent conviction. There comes a point in your journey when you're no longer trying to fit in. You are no longer asking for permission to dream. You are no longer explaining your choices to those who do not feel what you feel. That is when you realize that you no longer need to convince anyone of the legitimacy of your desire, that wanting more is not ego. It is essence. It is alignment with the flow of life that expands all that is true. For a long time, you may have hidden your desires, softened your plans, disguised your desire to prosper with speeches of misinterpreted humility, because society has conditioned you to believe that wanting a lot is greed, that dreaming big is presumption, that thinking big is disrespectful to those who have less. But there comes a time when this programming begins to dissolve, and in place of shame, lucidity enters. Neville Goddard said, "You are never a fool for acting as if you have already received it." And this phrase is revolutionary, because it allows you to get in touch with your inner reality before the world recognizes it. You start to walk with more posture, speak more clearly, wear your ideas with more firmness, not to impress, but to integrate, not to prove, but to be. Silent conviction is a state of very high vibration. There is no fanfare. There is no need for recognition. There is only a calm certainty that pulses within. You start to plan with more focus, to invest energy in studies, practices, and actions that no one sees. And all this without the urgency to show it, because you know, when the manifestation comes, it will be just the natural consequence of what you already are, and no longer a validation of what you wanted to be. Losing the fear of appearing crazy is, in fact, rediscovering your vibrational sanity. It is realizing that the world has been conditioned to consider fear, boredom, and resignation normal. And perhaps the real madness is living trapped in a limited version of yourself, just so as not to bother anyone. There is courage in wishing big. There is beauty in imagining possibilities that no one around you understands. And there is real power in continuing even without applause, even without an audience. When this courage is born, the field responds, because the universe does not move by forced modesty. It moves by coherent vibration. And the vibration of someone who wishes with faith, acts with presence, and waits with serenity is one of the most magnetic that exists. You no longer need to justify yourself. You no longer need to protect yourself from skeptical looks. You just need to keep going, and keep going with your eyes fixed, your heart open, and your spirit attentive. True wealth begins like this. When you honor your inner calling more than external expectations, when you stop shrinking to fit in and start expanding to exist, not as someone who challenges the world, but as someone who has finally decided to be whole. And whole, you are inevitable. Whole, you are already abundance, even before any result, even before any achievement, because conviction is already an achievement. And yours, silent as it is building everything, step by step, frequency by frequency, truth by truth. The inner voice begins to shout louder than the noise of the world. There is a phase of the journey in which, even amidst the external noise, something in you begins to become clearer, firmer, more present. It is as if a new voice, deeper and older, begins to occupy the space that was previously taken by other people's opinions, social expectations, well-intentioned advice, but misaligned with your essence. This voice does not need to impose itself. It does not shout in the traditional sense, but when it speaks, you listen. Even if you don't want to, even if you have learned over the years to silence it to please the world, this inner voice is not a creation of your mind. It is a memory of your spirit. It is the frequency of your original truth reappearing, asking for space. And when it emerges, everything begins to be questioned. What you do, where you are, who you walk with, what you tolerate, the way you talk about yourself, the way you let go in the name of harmony. And this deep reassessment doesn't come with drama, it comes with clarity. Napoleon Hill wrote that the subconscious mind is the center of silent creation. And when your subconscious mind accepts a new identity, a new vision, a new vibrational pattern, it begins to communicate with you, not in words, but in feelings, in intuitions, in perceptions that cannot be explained, but are impossible to ignore. And the closer you get to your true frequency, the more this voice becomes your main compass. You begin to realize that you can no longer follow generic advice. You no longer fit into patterns that seemed right. You no longer feel the need to explain your intuition, because the truth is that the inner voice doesn't need to be validated. It needs to be heard. And when you begin to listen to it, truly, with presence, with humility, it reveals paths. It suggests pauses. It proposes movements. It guides you not by what is logical, but by what is consistent with your vibrational field. This voice grows stronger every time you respect it, and it weakens every time you ignore it in order to be accepted. But with time, you understand that no external acceptance is worth the price of losing yourself. Prosperity begins exactly at this point, when you understand that there is no greater power than living aligned with your own truth, even if it seems lonely, even if it doesn't make sense to those who observe you from the outside, because true meaning is not outside, it is inside, and it is this meaning that sustains everything worthwhile. When your inner voice becomes louder than the noise of the world, you no longer need so many confirmations. You no longer despair for quick answers. You no longer look for ready-made formulas, because you know that there is only one path, and that there is a compass within you. And this compass, silent as it is, takes you straight to the life that is yours. That has always been yours. That is waiting patiently for you to finally say, I trust, because the voice that guides you is the same one that created you. And it is never wrong. You stop talking about money as a problem and start thinking of it as a tool. There is a silent but profound turning point on the path of those who are becoming prosperous. It is when money stops being an emotional burden, a constant worry, a repeated pain, and starts to be seen for what it really is, an energy, an extension of your vibration, a tool at the service of your intention. This change does not happen theoretically. It happens in the body, in the vocabulary, in the breathing, in the way you relate to value. For years, you may have talked about money as if you were talking about an enemy, with fear, with frustration, with resentment. You may have heard phrases like, money is dirty, those who have a lot of it are the ones who stole it, or money doesn't bring happiness. And without realizing it, you have been creating a vibrational connection between money and pain, between money and scarcity, between money and guilt. But there comes a time when this association begins to break, and in its place, something new is born, a cleaner outlook, more lucid, more loving. Napoleon Hill said that money, when well directed, is one of the greatest forces of transformation that exist. It is neither good nor bad. It is a mirror. It simply magnifies what you already are. And when you start to vibrate differently, money feels it and responds, not as a miracle, but as a consequence. This transition happens when you change the way you talk about money. When you stop repeating that there is always a shortage, that there is never enough, that everything is expensive, and you start talking about it with more awareness. Start saying, I'm learning to manage better. I'm preparing to receive more. I'm making room for prosperity to flow. It seems subtle, but energetically, it's a leap. Speaking is creating, thinking is programming, feeling is activating. And when these three elements align, reality begins to respond. You don't see the result right away, but you feel it. You feel it when you go to pay a bill, and even with little, you do it with dignity. You feel it when you receive, and instead of fear, you feel gratitude. You feel it when you realize that money doesn't define you, but can free you, if you know how to use it to serve your essence. Money as a problem creates scarcity. Money as a tool creates expansion. When you start to see it as an ally, everything changes. You start to respect money, not worship it. Honor it, not fear it. And this energy of respect creates a field of discreet but real abundance. A field where money arrives with less effort, it becomes more stable, and it moves with more awareness. This is one of the clearest signs that you are ready to become rich. When your language changes, when your mindset elevates, when money stops being a field of tension and becomes a space of creation. And in this space, what is born is more than wealth. It is freedom. It is purpose. It is the power of choice. It is life in abundance. Not just in numbers, but in feeling, in being, in allowing. And it all begins with a simple, yet profound change of perspective. The one that transforms money from an enemy into an instrument, from an obstacle into a bridge. You begin to notice repeated patterns of behavior and decide to break them without drama. A silent moment comes when you begin to see yourself more clearly, as if, suddenly, the scenes of your life began to repeat themselves before your eyes. The same dialogues, the same choices, the same emotions that return, like a disguised cycle. And at that moment, a new awareness begins to emerge. Maybe the problem is not outside. Maybe the repetition is coming from within, from what you accept, of what you pretend not to see, of what you do on autopilot while you wait for a change that, deep down, you already know needs to start with you. Recognizing patterns is an act of courage, because it requires presence, it requires inner silence, and above all, it requires a willingness to look honestly at your own movements. It is very easy to believe that life is blocked by external factors. It is harder to realize that often it is we who are keeping it blocked, with old habits, with old emotional reactions, with unconscious fidelity to stories that have lost their meaning but continue to dictate the script of our existence. Napoleon Hill talked about the power of repetition in the subconscious. The mind creates pathways, and then it repeats, even if those pathways are taking us to places we no longer want. But here's the crucial point. The same mind that repeats can also reprogram. And this reprogramming begins when you decide, calmly, with presence, without drama, to break the pattern. You don't need to make a fuss. You don't need to announce to the world that you're going to change. All it takes is an internal gesture, a movement of consciousness, a simple enough, whispered firmly within your own heart. And this small act already begins to change everything, because it interrupts the flow of the automatic. It interrupts the repetition circuit. It makes room for a new type of energy to circulate within you. Breaking a pattern doesn't mean ceasing to be who you are. It's actually starting to be who you've always been, before the defenses, before the traumas, before the conditioning. It's remembering that you have a choice, that you have a voice, that you have the right to react differently, to think differently, to choose differently. And the more you allow yourself to act outside of the script, the more the universe responds, because it recognizes when your vibration changes. And it begins to send you new possibilities, new people, new experiences that are compatible with this new version that is being born. A version that does not repeat itself, reinvents itself, that does not imprison itself, frees itself. This silent decision to break patterns is one of the noblest signs of spiritual maturity, because it shows that you are no longer waiting for the world to change before changing from within. You have understood that true movement happens from the inside out, and that, by transforming your behavior, you begin to redesign, step by step, the reality that previously seemed impossible. No rush, no guilt, no spectacle, just with the firmness of someone who knows. It is no longer possible to live the same story, because now you have chosen a new script, a script of awareness, of presence, of true prosperity. You begin to act with more order, not through rigidity, but through direction. Inner order is not born from an external demand, nor from an attempt to control. It arises as a response to a new kind of consciousness, a gentle clarity that sets in when you finally understand that life needs structure to flourish. And that chaos is not a sign of freedom, but of the absence of presence. When this understanding arrives, you begin to organize yourself, not out of obligation, but out of alignment, not to prove yourself, but to sustain what you want to manifest. For a long time, perhaps you resisted discipline, confusing order with rigidity, structure with limitation. But now, something inside you begins to realize that without direction, purpose is lost, that without clarity, energy is dispersed, that without internal organization, abundance finds no space to dwell. And so, silently, you begin to put each thing in its place, one thought at a time, one habit at a time, one gesture at a time. Napoleon Hill said that success is not an event, but a sequence of conscious actions, guided by a clear intention and sustained by an ordered mind. The chaotic mind can have brilliant ideas, but it cannot sustain them. An orderly mind may be silent, but it builds. And it builds consistently, with foundation, with depth. This change in posture is not visible to the outside observer, but you feel it. You realize that you are more selective about what enters your routine, about what deserves your attention, about what is worth your time, and not out of arrogance, but out of self-love. Because now, more than ever, you understand that each small gesture carries a frequency, and that this frequency is constantly shaping the reality that you will inhabit tomorrow. You begin to create simple but meaningful rituals, to take better care of the space around you, to respect your own schedule, to commit to what you promise yourself. And all of this creates an energy of presence, respect, and coherence. Life begins to respond more fluidly, because where there is order, there is space for the new to arrive. Acting with order is not living like a machine, it is living with intention. It is transforming everyday life into a temple. It's about making every act, no matter how small, a mirror of your new frequency. Because when the universe realizes that you're organizing your inner world, it understands that you're ready to receive more ideas, more resources, more opportunities. Abundance does not come about through permanent improvisation. It manifests itself where there is a vibrational structure to sustain it. And this structure begins with simple choices, with conscious habits, with small gestures that silently say, I am ready to live lightly, but with direction, with freedom, but with purpose, with flow, but with presence. And this presence, ordered and firm, is one of the greatest manifestations of inner power that exists, because it is what transforms the invisible into concrete. It is what transforms desire into fulfillment. You become attracted to content that you previously ignored, about finances, purpose, leadership, energy. Something silently changes in the way you seek knowledge. Suddenly, subjects that previously seemed distant or uninteresting begin to draw your attention with force. Not because someone told you to learn about them, but because something inside you began to feel that you needed to prepare, that you needed to understand more, that you needed to strengthen yourself not only spiritually, but also intellectually, emotionally, energetically. You begin to feel the desire to know how money works, how energy moves, how purpose is built, how leadership manifests itself with presence and truth. And this does not happen as an imposition. It happens as an attraction, as if your mind were being pulled towards content that resonates with your new field. And this is one of the most evident proofs that your frequency has changed. Napoleon Hill said that an intense desire for specific knowledge is one of the clearest signs that the mind is preparing for great achievements. And this is confirmed here, because you begin to search no longer out of empty curiosity, but out of vibrational alignment. You feel that studying is now an act of preparation, that understanding certain topics is a gesture of self-respect, that expanding your consciousness is the next step to sustain the reality you want to create. You start to be interested in books that previously seemed too technical, in videos that previously seemed dense, in lectures that previously seemed distant from your reality. But now, all of this seems to have been made for you. It seems to speak to a part of you that you have always known, but that is only now waking up. And this intellectual awakening is part of your energetic awakening, because everything is connected. The mind that opens to new content is the mind that has understood that there is no spiritual growth separate from practical growth, that there is no point in having high intentions if you lack the preparation to sustain the manifestation, that there is no point in feeling the call if you have not yet built the structure to respond to it firmly. You begin to feel pleasure in learning, not as an obligation but as expansion, not as a requirement but as nourishment. The right content arrives at the right time, and each new piece of information that you absorb seems to fit a piece into your inner puzzle. You realize that you are no longer learning by chance. You are rebuilding yourself from within, and this requires new maps, new languages, new references, and the more you honor this movement, the more the universe sends you resources, people, courses, ideas, connections, because it recognizes when you are saying, with your simplest gestures, I am ready to go further. And this beyond begins with what you consume, with what you feed your mind, with what you decide to listen to, watch, practice. Because all of this, in the end, is vibration. And when your vibration asks you to know more, it's because you're preparing to live more, to manifest more, to receive more, and to finally sustain all of this with wisdom, purpose, and presence. You start to feel uncomfortable with shallow conversations. One of the most subtle yet most revealing signs that your consciousness is expanding is the growing inability to remain in environments where depth has been forgotten. What once seemed like lightness now feels like escape. The constant laughter without purpose, the judgments disguised as humor, criticism as a social habit. All of this starts to generate in you not only disinterest, but a clear sensation of vibrational displacement, as if your body were present, but your soul no longer fit there. It's not about spiritual arrogance. It's not about feeling better than anyone else. It's about feeling that something inside you is asking for more truth, for more meaning, for more meaningful silence and less memorized noise. Superficial conversations, those guided by automaticity, empty consumption, and constant comparison, begin to sound like interference in your field. They tire you out, they drain you, and you begin to realize that what you seek now are encounters that elevate you, not just fill time. Napoleon Hill talked about the power of invisible influence, and these conversations, even though they may seem harmless, are forms of influence. Every word carries a frequency. Every conversation is a field exchange. And when you repeatedly engage in interactions that vibrate in scarcity, judgment, and constant distraction, it begins to affect your energy. And not because you are fragile, but because your frequency has become more refined, more selective, more conscious. You begin to seek another type of dialogue, words that open, sentences that silence, exchanging information for insights, exchanging opinions for presence, exchanging ready-made answers for questions that still echo in the void. And when you find these conversations, even if they are rare, something inside you lights up because you recognize that there is space there to be whole, to breathe deeper, to exist truthfully. This change in the quality of your interactions is yet another reflection of the internal change that is happening. You no longer just want company. You want connection. You no longer just want to be heard. You want to be understood. And that requires another level of listening, another kind of presence, another kind of intention. The discomfort with superficiality is, in fact, an invitation to a new kind of communion, a communion where words are bridges, not walls, where silence is comfortable, not awkward, where exchange doesn't need to be exaggerated to be real. And in that kind of space, you flourish. Your mind expands, your heart relaxes, and your soul breathes. Wealth, in its essence, is not just material, it's vibrational. And being in environments where you can be profound is a form of emotional wealth. It's a sign that you're increasingly attracting that which resonates with who you truly are, and leaving behind that which only fed a version of yourself that no longer exists. Because now, you no longer want to talk to fill the void. You want to feel. You want to touch. You want to remember, through the right word, at the right moment, that life is more than noise. It's living connection, and it's that connection that you've begun to choose, even in silence, even without announcement, but with total inner clarity. You feel that something big is coming, but you don't know what, and yet you start to prepare yourself. There is a type of intuition that cannot be explained. It doesn't give dates, it doesn't reveal details, it doesn't show complete scenarios, but it pulsates, like a constant, almost imperceptible whisper telling you that something is approaching, something bigger, something that may not yet have a name, but that is already present, an invisible presence that begins to shape your thoughts, your attitudes, your way of being in the world. You don't know what it is, but you know that you need to be ready. This feeling is not imagination. It is not disguised anxiety. It is a vibrational prediction, a phenomenon recognized by great minds and spirits throughout history. Napoleon Hill, when studying the most successful men of his time, realized that they all carried a type of silent certainty, that they were moving towards something that did not yet exist, but that was already calling them. This certainty did not come from external evidence. It was born from an internal state of connection with the field of infinite possibilities. You begin to notice this change in the way you position yourself. Your habits change. Your choices become more intentional. You begin to distance yourself from distractions that no longer match this new calling. And even without understanding what is coming, you feel that you can no longer live as before. There is a kind of sacred urgency that moves you, an invisible preparation, an inner training, as if something were being adjusted within you so that you can sustain what is to come. And this movement is silent. You don't tell anyone. You just feel. You just organize. You just clean out what no longer serves you. You restructure what was neglected. You strengthen what was fragile. And all this without promises, without fanfare, without guarantees. Because what guides you now is no longer logic. It is intuition. It is alignment. It is the magnetism of that which already exists in another dimension, but which is still on its way to form. You begin to prepare your field. You take care of your mind. You tune your emotions. You become more careful with what you consume, what you say, what you think, because you silently sense that the new requires space, that the new requires maturity, that the new requires a version of yourself that has already begun to emerge, even if no one else notices. And this preparation, however invisible it may seem, is one of the purest forms of faith. Faith without a map, faith without a script, faith that does not require seeing in order to begin to act. When you enter this state, you connect with the true power of creation, because creation begins like this, with a subtle perception, with a vague idea, with an inexplicable desire to prepare for something that has not yet arrived. And it is precisely in this space between the invisible and the real that life begins to reorganize itself around you, because it understands that you have already said yes, even without knowing what to. And this vibrational yes opens doors, moves pieces, activates paths that before seemed distant. Do you feel that something big is coming? Trust, even without proof, even without clarity, because this feeling is not lying. It is the echo of a future reality that has already begun to form, and all it needs now is for you to continue preparing, with presence, with lightness, with firmness, like someone who already knows that destiny is not what is to come, it is what is already pulsating. Here, now, inside you, you stop fighting to be understood, and start building silently. There comes a moment in your journey when you deeply understand that being understood is no longer essential, that convincing others of your vision, your choice, your change, is an effort that no longer makes sense, because you realize that the more you try to explain the invisible, the further you move away from your own energy. Explanations drain, justifications divert, and at some point, you decide to simply do it, live, manifest, without an audience, without applause, without translation. This is one of the most subtle and powerful signs of alignment with true prosperity, because prosperity does not shout, it is built in silence. Napoleon Hill wrote that the most successful men of his time did not talk about what they would do, they just did it. And when their actions became visible, the world thought it was luck. but it was just the natural result of an internal construction done away from the eyes, away from the rush, away from the need for approval. You begin to realize that wasting energy trying to be validated is wasting the creative impulse, that trying to convince someone that you are changing is a way of maintaining the bond with the old version of yourself. And then you let go. You let go of the need to be understood. You let go of the concern about what people will think. You even let go of the fear of being rejected, because you understand that the most painful rejection does not come from outside. It comes from within, when you abandon yourself for the sake of someone else. When this liberation happens, something magical takes hold, a fertile silence, a new space. You start to act more, to do more, to accomplish with more intention. Your steps become firmer, your energy cleaner, and even if no one sees it, you feel it. You feel that something inside you has reorganized itself, that now the focus is no longer on the other person's gaze. It is on alignment with what you came to build. This silence is not omission, it is maturity, it is vibrational intelligence. Because there are things that only flourish away from the noise. There are ideas that need the shade to take root. There are movements that, if exposed too soon, lose strength. And you begin to honor this time, respecting this cycle, protecting your inner construction like someone who cares for a rare seed. Because you know, when it blooms, there will be no need to explain. The world will see. And until then, you continue. One day at a time, one gesture at a time, one brick at a time. Not for recognition, but for coherence. Because now, your greatest need is not to be understood. It is to be true to what you feel. And this silent truth builds, sustains, radiates, and prepares the ground for a prosperity that does not need to be proven, because it simply is. And it is already on its way. You begin to value the invisible. Silence, ideas, discipline, energy. There comes a time when that which cannot be touched becomes more valuable than everything that is visible. You begin to realize that silence has more answers than 1,000 pieces of advice, that an idea can be more powerful than any external resource. That discipline, previously seen as sacrifice, reveals itself as inner freedom, and that your energy, this invisible field around your body, is the basis of everything you attract, build, and manifest. This shift in value is subtle, but it completely transforms the way you live, because you stop measuring wealth only by what you can count or show, and you begin to recognize the depth of that which is intangible. You begin to protect your silence more zealously, to respect the time of your ideas, to strengthen your discipline, not out of obligation, but out of love, and to feel with increasing clarity when your energy is clean and when it is being contaminated. Napoleon Hill spoke about the power of organized, disciplined thought, guided by a clear emotion. And all of this happens in the invisible. You can't see a thought. You can't measure an intention, but its effects are immense. An orderly mind generates an orderly life. An elevated emotion generates a magnetic field that attracts opportunities, and a coherent energy generates subtle but decisive responses from the universe. You begin to treat the invisible as sacred, to honor small habits, to see meaning in practices that previously seemed too simple to be important. You understand that meditating for 2 minutes can change your entire day, that breathing with presence before making a decision can avoid weeks of confusion, that sleeping with gratitude can reorganize your vibration. And all of this happens out of sight, but deep within you. Valuing the invisible is a sign of spiritual maturity, because it means that you no longer need constant proof, that you trust the process, that you recognize the strength of what is being gestated, even if it has not yet manifested. And this silent confidence is one of the greatest vibrational signatures of prosperity. You are no longer chasing formulas. You are creating rhythm. You are no longer obsessed with results. You are cultivating presence. And all of this transforms your frequency. Your energy stops being scattered and becomes focused. Your mind stops being anxious and becomes orderly. Your life, little by little, begins to reflect the harmony that you are building in the invisible. And when this happens, the world responds, because the universe is sensitive to coherence. It feels when you are whole, and it sends in the same measure. Prosperity is not just money, it is serenity, it is clarity, it is emotional mastery, it is spiritual strength. And all of this begins in the invisible, where no one sees, but where everything is born, where everything is decided, where everything is transformed, first into vibration, then into reality. The crisis that seemed to destroy you actually led you to the emotional clarity that you would never have discovered on your own. There are times when everything seems to fall apart, where pain asks no permission, where plans fail, certainties break, and faith seems to hide behind the shadows. It is in these moments that you believe you have lost control, that you feel that nothing makes sense anymore, that life may have forgotten you. But with time and with the right listening, you realize that that pain, that crisis, that fall were not there to punish you. They were there to reveal you. It is in breakdowns that frequencies are reconfigured. It is in forced pauses that the soul finds the space it has been silently asking for. Napoleon Hill said that every temporary defeat carries in its core the seed of an equivalent benefit. And this phrase only makes sense when you go through the dark night and survive, because it is only after that that you see. After that, you understand. After that, the light returns, not from outside, but from within. A crisis often does not destroy, it cleanses. It removes what was sustained by appearances. It breaks the masks that you yourself wore to try to function in a world that did not respect your rhythm. It interrupts the flow of illusion to make room for the truth. And this truth, even if it comes with pain, is liberating, because it reconnects you with what is essential, with what is simple, with what pulses in silence. You begin to realize that it was in that crisis that you learned to listen, to feel, to look at yourself with more compassion. It was in that fall that you finally understood where you were still stuck, that you realized that what hurt was not only what was missing, but what no longer made sense. And this clarity could not be taught by a book, by a video, by a master. It could only come from your own journey. This is spiritual alchemy. Transforming pain into direction, transforming collapse into construction, transforming tears into lucidity. And this is not romanticizing suffering. This is honoring the journey. It is respect for what you had to go through. It is gratitude for the strength you didn't know you had until you had to use it. It is the deep understanding that your soul did not come just to conquer. It came to awaken, and awakening often begins in the darkness. But now you know, you feel. What seemed like the end was the beginning. What seemed like ruin was reconstruction. What seemed like loss was liberation. And this emotional clarity, this vibrational maturity, this new outlook that you carry is one of the most sacred signs that you are ready to receive more. Not because you have won, but because you have understood, because you have become, because you are vibrating not from blind desire, but from conquered wisdom. And it is from this place that true wealth begins. Not the wealth of escaping pain, but the wealth of having come through it and yet choosing to continue. To continue with more presence, with more purpose, with more truth, with more soul. Because now you are no longer the same. And life, feeling this, will not be either. Most people wait for external signs of wealth, but the most powerful signs are the ones no one sees. Those who truly become rich are not necessarily those who talk the most about prosperity. They are those who have silently aligned their thoughts with their emotions, their actions with their energy, their intention with their presence. They are those who have accepted the invisible calls, who have respected the timing of their soul, who have listened to their intuition even when logic said otherwise. They are those who have crossed their inner deserts and yet kept going, not out of stubbornness, but out of wisdom. Napoleon Hill wrote that wealth begins in the mind and manifests in matter. This means that when the money arrives, the true transformation has already happened long before. It started when you changed what you thought, when you questioned what you tolerated, when you chose to leave behind the version of yourself that was content with less. When you decided, even without proof, to vibrate as who you already were. This decision cannot be measured, but it can be felt, and it is what shapes everything that comes after. Rhonda Byrne reinforces that the universe responds to your frequency, not to your words. It doesn't matter what you say. What matters is what you silently vibrate, especially in the moments when no one is looking at you. It is in this vibration, in this invisible field, that the future is formed. It is there that reality begins to organize itself in your direction, not by magic, but by coherence, by presence, by compatible frequency. If you are seeing these signs, if you felt each one of them pulsate inside you while listening to this video, perhaps your mind has already changed. Perhaps prosperity is already trying to reach you. Perhaps your energy is already ready, and the world is just trying to keep up. You don't need to run. You just need to stay. Honor this new frequency, sustain this new state, and trust that what vibrates in you with truth always manifests. The question is not, when will I get rich? The question is, what in me is already getting rich, even if I don't see it yet? If this video found your heart at the right time, if something inside you was touched in silence, write in the comments, "My mind is already ready for invisible wealth." Because this small gesture is more than interaction. It is vibrational confirmation. It is you saying to the universe, "Yes, I understand." And from there, everything starts to happen in silence, with depth, at the exact time, and with the certainty that you are already becoming everything you were born to be.